Authorities believe that at least 22 radical Islamists linked to the terror network behind the Brussels and Paris attacks could still be at large in Europe. As investigations continue, there's an increasing focus on community action, preventing young people becoming radicalised by offering them alternatives to extremism. That's the philosophy of Quilliam. Based in London, it's the world's first counter-extremism think tank. Haras Rafiq is Quilliam's Managing Director. He's also an advisor to the British Prime Minister David Cameron, and he's visiting Australia. He joins me live now from Canberra. So, Haras, what do you think, firstly, of the way the security services and the police responded to those attacks in Brussels?
I think, first of all, there have been a lot of security lapses in Brussels. We know that the individuals that carried out the attacks were able to hide for a long time hide in the open almost, within the communities in Brussels itself. And we also know that a number of the people were known to the authorities, known to the agencies. One in particular was actually arrested in Turkey and sent back to Belgium. But the problem that Brussels and Belgium has, per se, is that it has a very, very small security apparatus. So I think we're finding that Brussels and Belgium is becoming a hub, if you like, the epicentre for the global jihadist insurgency and the way that it's being carried out in Europe.
So what's your approach to tackling that at Quilliam?
I think there are a number of things. There are two parts. First of all, there's the sharp end, and that is actually providing interventions once somebody has been identified as showing sympathy, support or empathy even for Islamist terrorism. And then there's the larger part of the work that we do, really helping to build resilience within communities and doing the primary prevention work so that before people become radicalised, they've got the strength and the ability and the skills to push back against charismatic recruiters.
So what are your methods of reaching out to those young people who you believe are vulnerable to extremism, and also how do you spot those people? How do you identify them?
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a profile for a vulnerable individual. 47% of the people before ISIS that were convicted of Islamist terrorism in the UK, for example, were middle class, had university education, were integrated into society. The way to reach out to these people really is by using the same way that the recruiters are reaching out, and that's through schools, through universities and through online counter-messaging and alternative messaging. We really help in Europe to build networks and potentially looking to do that here in Australia as well, to bring civil society movements together, people who, from a safeguarding perspective, may not be have the experience within combating violent extremism, but are able to play a role in that primary prevention.
And what successes have you had?
Well, Quilliam's been going now since 2007, and online on our website we have a report called In and Outs of Extremism, where we actually take the anecdotes and the case studies of 5 former far-right extremists and 5 Islamist extremists and actually look at how and why they've been de-radicalised and what role we've played in it. Quilliam's been going for a while now, and we've worked both at the sharp end and de-radicalised some hard-end jihadis, but also more, the real success has been in preventing people from becoming extremists in the first place.
And you're visiting Australia. What differences, good and bad, have you noticed between the way the extremist threat is perceived and handled here compared to the UK?
I think Australia is a good few years behind us in the UK. You haven't had, thank God, the 7/7 that we had 11 years ago coming up to now. So I think that you are a little bit behind, but you are catching up. One of the big mistakes that Australia is making is that it's still seeing this as a problem just for the Australian Muslim communities to fix. I think the faith-based identity politics side of actually identifying Muslims as one homogenous group is a mistake. And secondly, just relying on Muslims to counter this ideology on their own is creating polarisation, so that some people think that Islam is good and other people think that Islam is bad, and there's no nuanced debate in the middle. It has something to do with Islam, but more so it is a political ideology that's actually radicalising youngsters.
Haras Rafiq, thank you.
My pleasure.